What's good, Buffs Nation? We got a lot to talk about today. We've got to continue our series on the position breakdowns, but now we're going to do all of them. We got a special guest in here today. He's going to tell you what he thinks about this defense, and he's not going to lie. And at the end, make sure you stick around because I know he's got a good prediction about who's going to really tear things up. We've got TJ here from College Football Addiction. TJ, how's it going today?
Man, I'm good. Thanks for having me back. I can get comfortable around here for sure.
Heck, yeah, we need to have you go ahead and just, co-host on a regular basis or something. Nah, kidding. You've got a lot of work going on, man, but we appreciate you coming back and hanging out with the people. As mentioned, people over here ask about you all the time, and hey, now they see you're alive and they know where to find you if they catch this video. So we've got to talk about the defense now. We talked about the offense in another video. You can check that out at the end of this video, at the end screen if you want to hear about the offense and TJ's breakdown of that. It'll be there available. But we got to talk about this defense, man. So, of course, Colorado's brought in a lot of transfers. We know this. This is kind of the thing that happens here at Colorado. But guess what? It also means that Colorado is taking the opportunity to bring in better talent than they had before, refreshing it to try to get better from that 4-8 season.
Sure.
When you look at the players that have been brought in, the linebacker room is solid. They've brought in some solid edges from like Pitt, trying to do some work. How do you feel about this Colorado defense, top to bottom?
Yeah, I mean, I think the defense. Now there was a really rough spot where Washington State got super hot late, but I think the defense trended, and that was also the game that Shador went out of. So I'll be fair and say like, man, we just kept giving the ball back at the end of through that game. But outside of that weird Friday night, with Cam Ward, right? Like that was a good team. I think that the defense trended up. You held Utah to 23. Arizona did score in the 30s, but you held Oregon State in the mid 20s. You held UCLA, who was favored against you big time, in the mid 20s. I think later in the year, the defense did kind of trend up and was getting better. And so I think that if that trend can continue, and if you can be holding teams to low 30s, mid 20s, you'll have a lot better chance, right? When you're giving up 46 to Stanford and you're giving up in the 50s to Washington State and obviously Oregon and USC and other teams put 40 plus on you, and those are going to be tough to win for sure. But if you can start to trend it down, and they did, they trended up at the end of last year. If the guys who are returning, and then I think they did get some impact players in the portal, you mentioned them, but if the guys who are returning like Shiloh and others on this defense can continue to improve, then I think they'll be in really good shape. And I think they'll have a chance. We always talk about Travis Hunter and again, how much is he going to play offense and defense? But both sides of the ball. I mean, he's the best player on the field at all times. And so, there's enough talent on this defense to be really good. I like some of the portal additions we'll talk about in a moment. But I think that they are I think they have a chance, again, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think they have a chance to be a top half of the Big 12 defense. I think there's a really good chance that their offense is like top 3, and could compete for the best offense in the Big 12 for sure. But I think, I'd be shocked if Colorado's offense wasn't top 5 in the Big 12. If their defense can be like top 8, top 10, somewhere in there, like around the upper half, then I think they're going to win a lot of games, right? Like your offense is going to win you a lot of games. Your defense is going to keep you in a lot of games. And again, the Big 12 is so wide open. I don't think there's anybody out there that you're like, oh my gosh, there's no way we could beat this team. But there aren't many where you say like, oh, that's an automatic win. And so why is that? Well, because there's a lot of good offenses and there's a lot of okay defenses. And so if you can just be average to good on defense, then I think you're in really good shape. And the Big 12 has never, this, but the Big 12 has never been known as a defensive conference, at least not the last couple of decades. It's very high flying and offensive. But I do think Colorado's the playmakers over there to really compete and really hold teams down. So, I'm encouraged by the defense. I think they'll be better than last year, and I'm excited about kind of seeing them out there on the field.
Yeah, Phil Steele, who does the college football playbook, basically feels like the Bible for any college football fan or any of the fanatics that really want to dig into it. He's been raving about this defensive line, bringing in players like a Deion Hayes as well as Samuel Okunlola, right, from Pitt, and BJ Green, who Coach Prime actually coached as a kid, right, which is kind of interesting that, he actually came in from Arizona State. And they brought in a few other players from Bama, LSU, Arkansas. So the anticipation is this line's going to be a lot better. How do you feel about the pass rush going into this coming season.
Yeah, well, it was non-existent last year. Like, they couldn't get after anybody, and that's why they were so bad against the pass. They were good against the run, and I'll even use like air quotes against good against the run, but teams just didn't run the ball against them. And so, like, that's how they were so good against the run. So I live in Tampa, and I remember a couple of years ago, the Bucs had the 32 ranked pass defense, and they had a top 5 run defense. And people love to flex that. Like, oh man, our run defense is so good. And it was just like, no, nobody runs against you guys because they can just pass every single down. And that's what teams did last year against Colorado. Like, if you were running the ball against Colorado, like, why? You can pick up way more yards. You can move the ball down the field way faster. You can be way more efficient by just throwing on them because they can't ever get after you. And it doesn't matter who you have out there on the outside. They cannot guard you for long enough if there's no pass rush. And that should not be an issue this year. Like, Samuel Okunlula is probably my favorite player on the defense. And not Shiloh and Travis, I get all that. But I love big, nasty edge rushers. And he is going to be an absolute beast for Colorado. I think he's going to be really, really good. I think that there's a chance that he could end up with like 6-7 sacks on the season and have a really, really productive, I won't even call it a breakout. Like, he was great last year for Pitt. But he could have like one of those years play himself into like a day 1 or day 2 pick. Like, he probably needs to get up to 9-10 sacks to get to day 1, but like he could be a second round, third round pick in the NFL draft coming up. And so, yeah, I love him. I think the defensive line, the pass rush that's coming this year should be way, way better. And I'm encouraged that they went out in the portal and got those guys. And I think a lot of times defensively, like, offensive line takes time to gel. You have to, like, it's not 5 individual pieces that need to work as one. Like, the offensive line is. It's 5 pieces that need to work as one cohesive unit. I think defensive line, you certainly want cohesion, especially when you're running stunts and twists and stuff like that. But I think defensively, you can get away with just being 4 elite rushers or 4 great pass rushers or run stoppers or whatever. You don't have to work as cohesively. And that's, I think they will work cohesively together, and I think they will get better over time. But at the end of the day, I mean, when your job is to pass rush, like, you pin your ears back and you go. And I think they've got some guys that can do that. I think they'll get after the quarterbacks this year and really, try and do what other teams did to Shedeur Sanders last year and just absolutely bully the heck out of him.
Yeah, it's just all about being physical, right? And as long as the defensive line can get in there and get at least a push, that linebacker in that secondary, which we'll talk about next real quick, we know that they're going to be very much improved. And that's actually probably most of the experience, especially in the secondary with Shiloh as well as Travis Hunter. They brought in Preston Hodge from Liberty and then DJ McKinney from Oklahoma State, which adds some good and much needed experience there to that secondary with some players that have stepped up, especially after losing Cormani McClain, who was supposed to be the one that was going to step up, as the young player. But the linebacker room with Levante Bentley, he's the one that, really heads that up with some of the transfers that came in. If they get the pass rush, I'm sensing that linebacker and secondary room is really going to run things for this Robert Livingston defense, man. How do you feel about the linebacker and secondary room heading into the season, and how impactful will they be going into the Big 12?
Yeah, I think that back 7 has a chance to be really good. And especially, not to gloss over the linebackers, but, you mentioned Livingston. I think that now, and I had some concerns and voiced them on the channel about Charles Kelly a few games in, and being a Florida State guy and growing up watching the Seminoles and then watching Charles Kelly's defenses, certainly wasn't trying to call for his job, but just kind of said, like, man, this is something we need to watch out for. Like, don't be surprised if Coach Prime makes a move. And then he did, right? We probably made that video in late September, early October, when we could kind of see the way things were trending, because I've watched Charles Kelly play, and great guy, great recruiter. That's not like a slam or anything, but Coach Prime thought it was time to move on too. I think bringing in Robert Livingston and that being, just the secondary being a little bit more of a focus, and we'll move back to linebackers in a minute, but the secondary being more of a focus is going to be a big deal, because you've already improved the defensive line a ton, and then you've got, your best players on defense, right, is your secondary. And so just being on the same page as the coach, like, you literally have the greatest cornerback of all time, as your head coach, and then you have a really good defensive coach, and then your defensive coordinator was a safety skill, was a secondary guy. And so I think that is going to benefit that group and that unit so much. And I think the secondary is going to be vastly improved. Again, I think they were good last year. You just can't cover guys for more than 5 seconds. And so the pass rush is going to help a ton there. The secondary is going to look way better. And again, I don't think they were bad. I just think couldn't get anything done because guys had forever to run around. And then on the linebackers, yeah, I think there's improvement there too. They'd have been really fortunate if they could have held on to DJ Lundy, who was the Florida State transfer that ended up transferring back. He would have made a massive difference for that front or for that middle group. But I do think the way that, a lot of modern day college football is trending, linebackers, I don't want to say they're not important. That's certainly not the angle that I'm going to take here. But I do think that, what your defensive line and what your back four do or back five do when you run like a 4-2-5 really matter a little bit more. And I like the fact that Shiloh's a big kid and can come up and play, a big kid, experienced kid, 24 years old. Yeah. Can come up and play near the line as well when you need some help at linebacker. But you mentioned some of the transfers, like that's a unit that should be improved as well. I think they're going to be in really good shape, and really their job is to take advantage of what the defensive line has done for them, right? Whether that's plugging the holes, whether that's just kind of making their job a little bit easier. I think the linebackers will be improved, but again, the secondary and the defensive line is where I think you'll see the biggest jump on this defense for sure.
All right, so give us your boldest prediction. What player on defense is the one that's going to stand out the most in your eyes?
Yeah, so I already mentioned Okunlula, so that would have been, if I wouldn't have gone on like a 2-minute rant about how much I love him, I probably would have just gone with that one.
Well, as a ACC guy, you've seen him enough, so
dude,
totally
yeah,
makes sense.
I'm glad he's not in the ACC anymore, to be honest with you. So, but yeah, I think to echo what I said a minute ago, I think there's a chance that he could absolutely be he needs to go off to get to the first round, but he could be a top, a day 2 guy for sure. Yeah, I maybe that's the bold prediction. It's just talking about how he could be a second or third round pick. I think it's Shiloh, man. I think he's going to play a little bit smarter. I know that it's maybe easy to just go with the coach's son or whatever, but he's so physical, and even that game he got kicked out of for laying too hard of a hit, and football just being soft now. I think that he is kind of like the captain back there. He's the leader, he's the voice, he's the heart and soul. Travis is the best player on the team and the best player on both sides of the ball. And if he returns punts, he's the best player on that unit too. But I think that you look at Shiloh being the kind of the heart and soul there, and this is a draft year for him too, right? And I don't know that he can necessarily jump up into the first round or not. I'm not going to say he can't, but I think he could play his way into the second round for sure. And I think there would absolutely be a chance that he could be a star. Very heady kid, very smart kid, plays with his absolute hair on fire. I think he's going to make a really big jump from year 1 to year 2 in Boulder.
Love that. TJ, thank you again for pulling up on that. Hey, let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, College Football Addiction here on YouTube. We talk a little bit of Colorado. We've certainly done some videos on it. If you haven't seen them, go check them out. But talking all college football. Yeah, you were on it. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. So come check us out, College Football Addiction.
Yeah, we appreciate you joining us. Hey, like I said, last video where we talked about the offense right up here above me. Check that one out. And then, of course, you can subscribe to the channel right above TJ. Appreciate you pulling up. And, go Buffs. We'll talk soon.
Go Buffs.